Come with me to a magical place where being labeled the pork queen is a compliment, where being nice is just a way of life, and where all leaders of the free world must pass through. Welcome to Iowa. Whether you're a current Iowan, an Iowa expat, or an Iowan at heart, this show is for you. This is the Iowa Podcast. Real Iowans, real talk, no drama. From the Jethro's Barbecue Studio, I'm Justin Brady. It's like heavy topic month, but you know, it's important. One of the things that have been in the news quite a bit lately is autism, and it's a very serious issue. And sadly, it's one of those issues that Americans, I have a theory on this, but Americans kind of drift away from. I learned a couple weeks ago from another podcast, as a whole nother story, that Americans tend to pull back when there are serious concerns and leave silence. That's probably not always the best approach. And so this is one of those topics where you don't know, what can I ask? What can't I ask? What is autism? What's actually happening? What are people going through that have a member of their family going through this? And so thankfully, Erin Kiernan joins us today. You probably know her from Channel 13. She anchors the news there to talk about this topic. Erin, thanks for coming in the studio.
Hi, long time no see.
That's right. We first met during my WHO radio days. We did a couple segments. You were a guest on our show.
Yes.
And so that, you know, it's kind of crazy when
full
worlds
circle
collide.
moment.
Full circle moment. Like I said, it is a very, very difficult topic. And there was a podcast I was listening to a few weeks ago, and this person had a death in the family. And the whole topic was how Americans are very different. And in this case, half her family was French, half her family was American. She says the French people like overload you with content when there's anything wrong. Doesn't matter what it's wrong, or if you're going through something, they want to know, they want to connect it. And Americans pull back.
Yeah.
And she was saying it's not a bad thing. Like, Americans aren't trying to do a bad thing, but sometimes that's not the best approach. So I want to talk about that with you today. Before we do, iowapodcast.com, go to the top if you like barbecue. This is a weird transition, isn't it? Sometimes it...
Not at all.
I don't always pull
I love
it off.
barbecue.
I don't always pull it off. Jethro's Barbecue, of course, is the sponsor. We love them to death. And if you go to the top of the page, iowapodcast.com, buy a $100 gift card, they will give you a $30 gift card. So Iowa Podcast scrolls to the top and get that deal. What's the stats now, Erin? Because we hear about it in the news. Of course, sadly, sometimes we hear about it in the controversial lens, which we're not going to go into today. We may touch on that a little bit, like why is it controversial? But what is the current status of children with autism? And the reason I ask you, and I have asked you to be in here, is because your son, I believe, is going through this right now. You've been very open on this journey, and most people aren't. It's very, very difficult. So what is the current status of autism in at least our country?
So it's interesting. Right now, it's 1 in 31 kids with an autism diagnosis. And a few years ago, I was producing a whole series on autism, which early on when our son was diagnosed, if you had said to me, oh yeah, you'll probably do stories on this, I would have said, oh, no way. No way will I even talk about this. But when I was in the midst of producing this, I don't know, it ended up being like 8-10 parts, the incidence actually went up. So it had been 1 in 44, it jumped to 1 in 31. Maybe to 1 in 36, and now it's 1 in 31. It keeps jumping, and pretty quickly. And that's one of the things that's been attention grabbing is the rate of autism in the United States. Now, where it's gotten controversial is why? Why is that happening? And there are a lot of different elements and arguments to that, which we can get into if you want to. But, you know, a lot of times these things start grabbing headlines too because of the people who are doing the talking. Now, as far as I'm concerned, great. You know, raise the awareness.
Right.
Keep it top of the headlines all day, every day. I think it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be helpful. And whenever you have this is something that has been very challenging for you and your family, goes without saying. And you've been very open about this on social media. Sometimes I hesitate to pry into these areas because these are personal areas. But then without doing that, you don't really show people what's really happening. Yeah. And so I'm kind of taking a nod. I'm kind of taking your lead here, which is you've been sharing some of this stuff openly. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is, maybe this is okay to talk about this. But I want to say first, like, it is really, really hard to talk about this kind of stuff out in the open. It's so excruciatingly hard to talk about things you're struggling with. And so thank you for doing this. Would you mind, like, what is a day in the life? Like, what are some of the things that you and your family struggle with and that challenge you that maybe most people aren't really aware of?
My husband and I say this to each other every single day. We phrase it like this: people have no idea, or if people only knew, or often we were so clueless before living this life. So almost every day we are sleep deprived.
Wow.
And I had no idea before this experience that so many autistic people struggle to sleep.
Really?
Yes. They can't turn their brains off.
Oh.
So a lot of times I think people think because there are so many co-occurring diagnoses with autism, there's a high incidence of anxiety, of ADHD, of sometimes intellectual disability. So many times, because of the way people on the spectrum process things, the assumption is, well, they're slow. When in reality, what's been shown on actual scans of people's brains is that they are processing exponentially more information than I am, than you are, than any quote unquote neurotypical person is. So it's that there's so much going on in their brains, they're overloaded. It's like they're short circuiting because they can't filter it down. And so then that translates to sleep. So Michael Francis, our son, who's almost 10, has always struggled to sleep. And so we are still as sleep deprived as people are when they have brand new babies. And we're heading into year 10. You know what I mean? So that's like a huge thing. But that's something that's just kind of become the norm for us. So we're like, okay, you know, you just keep plugging along. You just keep doing the thing. This morning, I took him to speech therapy and occupational therapy. So I think a lot of people would say, oh, yeah, speech therapy. I understand. That makes sense. What I think I know about autism. But people might go, occupational therapy? Why does an autistic kid need occupational therapy? Well, again, it's the way their brains work. So he struggles with fine motor skills, like using scissors, holding a pen or a pencil to write letters, using utensils to eat, those sorts of things. So we come out of the gate today, no one's had any sleep. We're going to go straight to a therapy session. Then we're going to go to school. And I think I can say this kind of across the board. I don't like speaking for other people, but I've talked with and heard from a lot of other parents of autistic kids. School is not fun for them. Like, it's just not an easy place and space in which to be, because we are constantly wanting them to conform to standards, expectations, behaviors, rule following, that all of those things are either extraordinarily difficult for them or impossible. Like asking Michael Francis to sit in a chair and absorb information and disseminate information or do whatever activity you want him to do is next to impossible for him. He just does not operate that way.
I think one of the challenges, correct me if I'm wrong, is that it is a spectrum.
Oh, yes.
And so when someone says Asperger's or autism, people pull from their own knowledge, and they're like, well, okay. I mean, Elon Musk has Asperger's. So what you're telling me, Erin, is that your son's going to be like a rocket scientist and everything's fine.
Oh, poor you.
Right. Like, oh, great. You're going to be a billionaire. And so I think that's one of the challenges, is because it's a spectrum and because things kind of show or on the surface is different, this also creates further confusion. But to a point, very light point, I have ADHD. I don't have autism. But even me in school, I hated school. I hated it so much. Of course, now I'm like learning all the time because it's on my own time frame. It aligns with my own, But and I didn't have autism, so I can't imagine how hard that would be, especially if the educational institution cannot communicate the value of the information being learned.
Yep.
And so I can't imagine.
But you get it. I mean, just in having that experience, my husband talks about that. And I have actually in recent years, because of the specific work my husband is doing now, I've said, I think you're autistic.
Really?
Yes. Now, super high functioning.
Yeah.
What, several decades ago would have been called Asperger's. That that term isn't even used anymore. We can get into that if you want to.
Yeah, I might
definition
finish
of the
thought,
spectrum.
But I might ask that.
And Michael kind of looked at me like, "What are you talking about? I'm autistic," and almost like he was a little offended. And I said, "No, it's the way your brain works. Like this isn't how my brain works. This isn't how I think the majority of the population's brain works, the way your brain works." And that's another thing we can get into. I said, if you want to step into this, like what is the cause? That's been the big hubbub, all the people going crazy about what RFK Jr. has promised in terms of we're going to identify the cause of autism this month, September. But we do know there's a genetic component. And we see that strongly in all of the scientific research. So, I mean, it's interesting.
Is this this is, boy, sometimes I wonder if we get deep into this or not. Sometimes I've had debates because I've been diagnosed with ADHD. I don't even know if it's even accurate. I couldn't tell you. But is it a measure? Is it like the medicalization of personality and like people with autism, people with, name your neurodivergent thing? Right. Is it a matter of society itself? The way we educate, the way we organize is really stupid. And we're forcing people into tiny little boxes, into very few categories that realistically don't exist. We're saying all people belong in these two boxes. Is that like part of the problem? Or is it much, much deeper than that?
There are a lot of problems in my opinion, in my experience with this. But I will say this before we go into this too. My opinions have become very fluid in all of this as I'm a reporter by trade, and innately I'm a very curious person. So I consume a lot of information from a lot of different sources about this. And so a lot of the opinions I may have held prior to living this existence early on in my son's diagnosis, midway through to now, it's all evolving for me, and based on what I learn and our experience, right? Which is unique. Everyone's is different. But I will say one thing I think is problematic, and it'll be interesting to see if this changes, is the diagnostic criteria changed.
Yes.
So I can't tell you how many years ago it was. I can tell you it's the DSM-5, okay? That is the diagnostic manual for this diagnosis, for many diagnoses, but since we're talking about autism. And what happened is many people who would be described as high functioning into that Asperger's label were now rolled into this spectrum of autism. So now all of these people are autistic, whether it's someone like my husband, who's super high functioning, someone like Elon Musk, who, people are like, well, I mean, he's a little quirky, right? But he's brilliant. To someone like my son, who is a level 2, to someone who is profoundly, profoundly autistic. They will never live independently. They will never speak a single word. They will never go to the bathroom unassisted. Like a lot of these, attention grabbing things that we've heard come out of the mouths of leaders. So the spectrum is so diverse.
You say there are a lot of terms here to unpack, and to do this right would probably be 2 hours. But and so for those listening, this is a half an hour show, so we move a little quickly. But you mentioned Asperger's. You kind of hinted at that's been a retired term. Mm-hmm. Then you said everyone falls under autism right now. That wasn't the way it was. You mentioned level 2.
Yeah, and
there's spectrum. So people listening that have low familiarity
are like, what is she saying?
Yeah, they're like, this sounds like a Rubik's Cube is there a way to easily unpack what the spectrum is, what levels are, what determines high and low functioning, what's the difference between Asperger's and autism? Is there a difference? I know that's a lot I just threw at you, but I also know you probably get that question a lot.
Yes, definitely. And again, a lot of this stuff I didn't understand early on because you're so overwhelmed, for a while you've had an inkling that something's off with your child, which is obviously deeply concerning for a parent. And then you finally get that diagnosis, which takes months and months and months of being on a wait list to see the appropriate doctor to get. And then you're just, it's like drinking from a fire hose, so much coming at you that, frankly, I don't even care about all of this. Like, just tell me what I got to do to help my kid. That's it. So when we are talking about levels, Michael Francis is level 2. So he's kind of hanging out here right in the middle. We're finding out, frankly, that he's a lot more capable than maybe a lot of people, including us, have given him credit for.
Oh.
Which is another whole thing. That could be a whole separate episode.
It's just some communication separation.
Yes. And some behavior issues that are probably tied to autism, but, maybe have to do with, some other diagnoses that he may or may not have. I mean, as you said, it's a lot to unpack, but he's that, kind of middle space. Now, if you're level 1, that's somebody who's very high functioning. So these are people that you would see on Love on the Spectrum, or, there have been a lot more like mainstream programs. A lot of people reached out to me when the gal was on Survivor who was autistic, oh, you got to watch this episode, whatever. She has this meltdown, And I watched it, and I totally appreciate hearing from people. And I'm like, that's awesome. But like, if Michael Francis is ever performing at that level, I will do naked back handsprings down the street because I will be so overwhelmed,
you think
with
that
joy.
Would make the news?
I don't know. I hope not. No one needs to see that.
It would make the news.
But you know what I mean? So that's what you're seeing with like level 1. Now, what we're also seeing as level 1 is somebody like an Elon Musk. I mean, I'm really starting to think like we did a big disservice by starting to put all of these people under the umbrella of autism.
Sure.
But my feeling is that happened because of insurance companies.
Oh, interesting.
Because it was very easy for insurance companies to say, we're not going to cover speech therapy, this therapy, that therapy, unless you have an autism diagnosis. So many, many people were excluded from getting therapy that would be helpful for them because of that. I have no idea if that's true. That's just what I think. Now, at the complete other end of the spectrum, you have people who have a level 3 diagnosis. The vernacular that a lot of people are using now is profound autism, that these people are profoundly disabled. It's not really a medical term. It's just the way people have been describing people who are that affected. And that's when you really see a lot of disability. And I use the word disability because I think euphemisms like differently abled or special needs are not helpful. It's because people are uncomfortable saying the word disabled. So I always say, my son is disabled. He is.
Yeah. And that further complicates it.
Yeah.
How do you help? How do you help someone if you can't even label it correctly?
Yeah, exactly. But I think back to your very first original point about Americans pulling back, it makes people uncomfortable.
Sure.
They get squirmy, like, ooh, that sounds mean.
Right.
To say disabled.
Well, we do live in that thing where nothing's bad.
Yeah.
Everything's great all the time, no
Yes.
matter how. It's like, you're dying on the sidewalk, and it's like, you can't say that guy's dying.
Toxic positivity.
You cannot say that because he could make a full recovery. That's offensive, you know? So there is, though, this underlying, and you did hint at it. There's so many things I want to get into, but I do wonder if there's a reason for this almost medical retreat of the issue. Like, you know, is there a reason? Is it that someone knows the cause and they don't want us to figure it out? Is it the fact that people are like, we just don't want to deal with this, we don't pay for it, hands off?
Right.
There is this, and I don't think you probably know. I definitely don't know. But there is, you alluded to this before, when we start discussing cause or why it happens, and you even mentioned this ahead of time. You're like, things get crazy. People get really angry.
People lose their damn
I
minds.
think the word you used in your email is people get really pissed off.
Yeah.
And so in an effort for a community, in this case, the community being the United States or Iowa,
Yeah.
in an effort for us to understand and help people, why is this so controversial to discuss causes? Like, why does this get people so angry? Shouldn't we want, as you, because you're like, I'm naturally curious. You said this. My view has changed. It's been fluid over. Why don't we all have that? Why can't we all say, hey, you say it's this, I disagree, here's what I've found? Why don't we, as community members, as advocates, and then as scientists and politicians, why can't we have that open debate and discussion without people getting pissed off all the time? What's behind that?
I think it's what we've seen in the political sphere over the past decade or more, where people really have lost the ability or interest in constructive dialogue and listening. You know, you can see that in people too. You and I are trained listeners, right? So like, you can be talking and asking a question, but you can even be thinking about your next question, but you're listening, really listening. Listening is an active thing, but you can tell when people are not doing it and they're just thinking about the next argument they want to make, the next point they want to make. And I think so many people have dug in to whatever trench, they've labeled themselves, or whatever group in which they have chosen to identify or believe, that they cannot open their minds enough to allow anything that conflicts with that in. And then a lot of what we're seeing now recently is definitely, it's all about the messenger. So, if this is a person, who has said things that piss me off, or, doesn't align with my ideology, I'm not willing to hear anything that they have to say. All of their ideas are bad.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of what's happened, sadly, within the autism community, is now people are fighting with each other about, what RFK said, what Trump said. Do we want to find a cause? Do we not care about the cause at all?
What?
Oh, yeah. The autism community is on fire, burning itself down over this stuff. It's crazy intense. And to your point, it would be very easy for me to sit here and say, well, I don't care about the cause. My kid already has autism.
Oh.
I'm not going to unring that bell. And then there's a big camp that's like, well, we just need to accept everybody the way they are. And, people have come at me, shame on you for wanting to change your kid. I'm like, I don't want to change my kid. I want to help my kid.
Right.
That's why I take him to therapy. I'm an old mom. I'm 52 years old. I'm going to be dead. And he has to exist in this world.
Right.
I want him to be functioning at the highest possible level he can. It gets really, really hard.
Right.
And people are very easily offended and defensive when you're talking about this personal stuff.
Yeah, what are the things, because you mentioned it's deeply personal, and like we talked about earlier, it's Americans, we pull back, we get scared, we don't want to dive into deeply personal. So are there some taboo areas? Like, I think that's what everyone's scared of. They don't want to say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Erin, I understand you're going through this thing right now, and I understand you and Michael Francis are struggling. I'm not going to reach out because I don't want to say the wrong thing and tick you off and make you upset, make you sad, or sever this relationship. So, like, first of all, is that a wrong approach? But if it's the right approach, what are those things that are taboo? Like, don't say this, that's insensitive. I think people need maybe like a little bit of a guide so they know how, you know what I mean?
I say every day, I wish I had a manual, God, I wish this kid came with a manual. Every parent thinks that about all kids. I mean, I feel that way about my 7-year-old daughter when I see flashes of her being 17 and I'm thinking, oh no, sweet baby Jesus.
Stop the world from spinning.
Somebody help me. Anyway, again, this is something that's been fluid for me. And it is part of that, I'm trying to take in, it's still that drinking from the fire hose. I'm trying to take in so much information, but I'll just give you a couple of examples of things that people get pissed off about that I may have gotten pissed off about a few years ago, and now I could care less.
Wow.
So,
okay.
One is the words that we use, so I got so caught up in this early on where people were like, you need to use people first language. And I was like, I don't even know. What are you talking about? That? Well, it's because I said early on in this coming out of, my son is autistic and I'm going to share about it. You need to use people first language. Okay. What? Okay. And people were mad. The way you need to say it is Michael Francis has autism. And this is the example people gave me. You wouldn't say Michael Francis is cancerous. Okay. I'm like, oh my. So then I was really like, okay, I'm practicing this and I'm schooling other people on it and whatever. Yeah. And I'm a big words matter person. Right. Words matter. Right, yes, right. Words matter. But I could give a shit. Now, if you say Michael Francis has autism or Michael Francis is autistic, I don't care. As long as you're being respectful and loving in the way you're talking about him, yes. I don't care about how you're saying this. Another thing is symbols. People in the autism community are fighting with each other about if we're using the puzzle piece or the infinity symbol.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
Gosh.
And I got caught up in that early on too, because again, people were shaming me for like having on a t-shirt that had a puzzle piece on it. And
seriously?
Yes. And that's a whole nother story about, what that is rooted in.
My word.
But now so just the other day, I finally wore this really cute t-shirt that someone had sent me. A viewer sent me like an Autism Mama t-shirt, and it's got puzzle pieces all over it. And I had been terrified to wear that thing.
Really?
Because I didn't want to offend people.
Sure.
And now I'm like, I'm over it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
But this is like, so for someone who is like earlier on the journey and they're very sensitive to it because it's so much information coming in, is the best strategy then just to go up to them and say, like Erin 5 years ago, or Erin, well, it would have been Erin like 8 years ago, right? And say, I know you're going through this thing. I don't know anything about it. So allow me to ask some questions that
yes.
may be stupid. Is
yes.
that kind of the best approach?
Totally. I will never get angry at people for asking questions.
Yeah.
I will get angry at people for being deliberately cruel.
Right.
I just put a post up on social media yesterday about some little kids just being awful to Michael Francis when we were at a public pool earlier this summer. And even after I pulled them aside and said, hey, here's the deal. This is why he acts this way. Don't be mean.
Yeah.
They kept being mean.
Sure. Yeah, of course they did.
And I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna knock you out.
Yeah.
Ugh. Being mean, I have a problem with. Being curious, no.
Is there an autism SWAT team for moms that comes and
We
takes
should have
care
one.
of
I will lead that.
duct
Yes.
tape them upside down and make what are the things that friends and family can do to help? Because it's a lot.
Yeah.
And you know how this works when you're a journalist, is you start to have all these different questions, and I rough estimate, I have like 4 hours worth of questions. So what are the things, like the bottom line, the manual everyone can take home with them? Like, do this one thing, do these two things. If your friend, your family member, your loved one is going through this, here are the things you can do to help.
Yeah.
What is that?
I think being present, and for friends, I'll never forget this. I'll share a quick story. It makes me a little emotional. One of my childhood friends was at our house visiting. She's actually my daughter's godmother, but we're very, very close. Been around our kids, since they were born, and probably knew very early on that, we should be having some evaluations and things done with Michael Francis. But anyway, this was not long after he had been diagnosed, and she and her daughter, who's significantly older, were at our house visiting, and Michael Francis was just having a bad day, and like epic meltdowns, property destruction, screaming, crying, all the worst things you can imagine. And I apologized. And she sat there for a minute, and then she said, I think it's important for the people who love you to see this. And I was like, huh. Like, even that is so counter to how I was raised, in terms of like, these are the rules, these are the expectations, and almost like a performance based thing, like, in order to be loved and have value and all of this stuff, you have to perform in a certain way and be in a certain way. And this kid just shatters that mold. But this friend of mine saying, not only am I sitting here and like maybe uncomfortable, but I'm still here, but also to go further and say, I think the people who care about you need to see this and need to understand that. That's huge.
Well, you've done a good job unpacking that today and helping people kind of understand what people like yourself, what you are going through. And of course, your continued posting about this stuff. I don't, honestly, when you said yes to this interview, I'm like, I don't know how you're going to do this, because this is really hard to talk about this in the open. For anyone who's gone through something traumatic or something difficult, it's hard enough just moving on from certain things and finding out what path in life you're on now. That's hard. But to openly talk about it and relive certain things is excruciating. And so I hope you understand, and I hope this impacts a lot of people in a positive way and helps us be better neighbors, better community members, better friends, better family, and I mean, truthfully, better viewers, so that they can understand there's a person that's delivering the news, and maybe don't make stupid comments and make dumb criticisms. Maybe
don't talk about my hair.
Yeah.
Can
could be a whole topic too.
That's
about
a whole.
All the criticism.
That's another podcast. Can I share quickly why I started sharing?
Yeah, please.
So, our son went to ABA therapy, which is a whole nother thing that no one needs to know the type of therapy it is. It's specific to autism, at a place called Balance Autism. And they contacted me asking if I wanted to interview filmmakers who were coming to Iowa to do a screening of a documentary that they had produced about the very first person in America diagnosed with autism. It was based on a book that they had written. These two people were a former reporter and producer from network news. I can't even remember if it was CBS, ABC, NBC. Anyway, the best in their field. So I'm like, yeah, sure. I'd be thrilled to meet these people. I go, I interview them. We're shooting some B-roll and stuff and chatting. And the woman says to me, whose son is autistic, why aren't you doing stories about this?
Oh.
And I was like, what? She's like, you should be doing stories about autism. And you should be sharing your family's story. I mean, she was almost chastising me for keeping this a secret.
Wow.
And that changed my whole worldview, having the opportunity to talk to them about personal experience and their work.
Wow.
So some days I don't want to do it. And other days I'm like, I'm so glad I chose to be open about this because I think it's making a difference in some way. I hope it is.
Me too. I think it is. Erin Kiernan, Channel 13, anchor, superstar, mega extraordinaire. I don't know the word. Thank you. Thank you so
Mom.
Yeah, and Mom. Thank you so much for coming on the Iowa podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Hey everyone, Justin here. Death is not the easiest topic to discuss. It's a hard one. It's pretty heavy. But I want you to think about this. What were to happen if you died right now? You died on the job. A lot of you listen while you're working, while you're commuting, while you're working, while you're driving for your job. What would happen right now if you died? Or if you got severely injured on the job? What would you do? What would your family do? If you don't have an answer, that's a problem because you're leaving them to pick up the pieces. I had Nate Bolton in here. He's an Iowa workers' rights attorney to talk about this very topic. Like, what do you actually do? How should you prepare in advance? He spent 20 minutes with me just giving you resources to tell you what to do, what to plan for, how to act, who to call. And so his number one chunk of advice is just have a plan ahead of time. Deal with the reality. It'll probably never happen, but just have a plan. The whole show's free. It doesn't cost you anything. iowapodcast.com/Nate. iowapodcast.com/Nate. Listen to that interview. It's so much good information. And to my fellow Iowans, Iowa expats, and Iowans at heart, thanks for listening and subscribing to the Iowa Podcast.